Okay, so you know how work can be like a lot sometimes.
Yes.
And then like you add in difficult coworkers.
Definitely. It's like a whole other level.
Right. It's like you just want to like find a way to deal with it without it turning into a huge thing.
Yeah, like without like all-out war.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So today we're going deep on this this really different way of like approaching these situations, these kind of tricky coworker things.
Right, right. And, you sent over this YouTube video, My Testimony God Will Handle Your Coworkers on Your Job,
Mm.
hashtag spiritual warfare, hashtag coworkers, hashtag job, from the Trust the Flow channel.
Yes.
It's like a super personal story. And it gives this kind of like a really unique way of understanding, I guess, and dealing with conflict at work.
Yeah, and you know, it's not about us saying like whether we agree or disagree with what they're saying, but just to like really break down like what is their strategy here, especially when they feel like it's more than just like, you know, personalities clashing.
Right.
They actually use the term a spirit of witchcraft at work.
Oh, wow.
So what stood out to me was how much they focus on like their own responses, you know, what they're doing, their faith.
Yeah.
And not so much like going to HR or like confronting people directly.
Right. Right. At least in this specific story.
Yeah.
It is important for you to keep in mind this is like one person's take, you know?
Yeah.
We're kind of looking at it to understand like their perspective and why they did what they did. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, okay, let's break it down. What was the situation like, the beginning part, that made them use this approach?
Okay, so they start by talking about coming back to work after having surgery.
Okay.
And there were all these new coworkers that seemed to be kind of like their own little clique. And they immediately felt left out.
Oh.
And they described it as like this unspoken negativity, you know, that they don't speak or anything like that. But what really, really got to them was that they felt like they hadn't done anything to deserve this.
Oh.
They said, especially when you have not given a reason as to why you should be attacked like this.
Oof. Yeah, that feeling of being like singled out or targeted for no reason, that can be so unsettling, you know, in any situation, but especially at work where you're supposed to work together, you know?
Right.
It's just awkward. So, yeah, I can see why they might see it as something more than just like, you know, typical office drama.
Right. And that leads into what they believe the motive was behind all of this. They really felt strongly that this was a spiritual attack aimed at their ability to keep their job, their finances. They were very direct. Satan would love nothing more than for you to be able to be unemployed. He would love nothing more than that.
Wow.
And this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
They believed that this attack was happening through their coworkers, who they saw as being demonically influenced.
Okay, so that's a pretty serious way of looking at it.
Yeah.
So basically they see this as a spiritual battle, and that means they're going to, you know, try to find spiritual solutions.
Exactly.
So, you know, what might seem like just awkwardness at work, to them, it's something much bigger, something unseen going on. I mean, it's fascinating how that belief shapes everything they do.
Right. So instead of, you know, going to a manager or confronting anyone, their chosen strategy was prayer.
Okay.
And not just any prayer, spiritual warfare prayer.
Yeah.
They talk about praying against different demonic spirits and, like we said before, the spirit of witchcraft.
Okay.
This is like their main way of dealing with the whole thing.
Yeah.
Now, when they say spiritual warfare prayer, for them that means a kind of prayer that directly goes up against these negative spiritual forces that they believe are influencing their work.
So it really shows you how important, you know, their personal faith and beliefs are to them.
Yeah.
For them, prayer isn't just, you know, hoping for the best. It's like actively taking on what they believe is the root of the problem.
Yeah, and the first step in their spiritual plan was to bring my flesh into subjection.
Okay.
You know, that really hit me. They talked about that feeling, that urge to fight back when you're left out or someone's mean to you.
Yeah.
They actually said, you want to operate in your flesh.
Yeah.
It's like our instinct.
I really feel like defend yourself.
Right.
Fight back.
But they chose not to.
Wow.
They decided to resist that urge.
That's some serious self-awareness, you know?
Yeah.
And commitment to, you know, their beliefs, even when it's tough emotionally.
Right.
I mean, if you think about it from a, you know, not religious angle, it's like emotional regulation, you know, choosing how you respond instead of just reacting.
Yeah. And it wasn't just about, you know, what they did on the outside. They also talked about this idea of combating suspicion. You know how easy it is to think the worst when you're stressed?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And they said, the enemy will play with your mind. He'll make you think everybody talking about you.
Oh, I felt that.
So they fought against that.
Yeah.
They reminded themselves that not every little whisper or side conversation was about them.
So smart. It's like in any situation where you feel like a little, vulnerable, your mind goes to like the worst case scenario.
Right.
Like you just assume the worst.
Right.
So it's smart to like challenge that.
Yeah.
Like not letting your insecurities decide what's going on. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And, their prayers weren't just like general wishes for things to get better.
Okay.
They had specific things they would ask for.
Really?
Like asking God to make my enemies my footstool,
Okay.
to put my enemies at rest with me and grant favor.
Okay.
And this is interesting given what they were doing. Asking God to humble my own spirit, humble my heart, humble my mouth.
Ooh, interesting. Those first couple are like, wanting things to change in their favor,
Yeah.
which is pretty normal. And, when you're in a fight with somebody.
Yeah.
But that last one, the humbling one, that sounds like it was a turning point. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they actually say that that's when things started to change. When they focused on humbling themselves, and doing what they thought God wanted them to do. Like that shift from worrying about what others were doing to focusing on their own actions, that seemed to be like the key.
That's something that a lot of different beliefs and philosophies talk about.
Yeah.
Like the best way to deal with tough situations is to focus on what you can control yourself.
And at the heart of their strategy is this idea of trusting that God will step in. They even said, remove myself and allow God.
Wow.
They even talked about Psalms 35, where it says God will contend with those who contend with you. They really believed that, so much so that they said, you shouldn't try to fix it yourself because that might mess up God's plan.
Interesting.
And it could even put your job and your money at risk, which they thought was the whole point of the attack in the first place.
Yeah.
So it was like this huge act of trust.
I mean, this idea of letting go of control and trusting in something bigger than yourself, it's a big part of a lot of faiths. It can really give you peace, because you don't feel like you're carrying the whole weight of the problem on your own.
Right. And this belief in divine intervention led to them taking very specific actions day to day.
Like what?
They talked about choosing to not respond, like shutting their mouth, not reacting to any negativity, not arguing even when they wanted to. They said it took a lot of effort to, swallow their pride and not react.
Even if you aren't religious, not engaging can be a good move. It can stop things from getting worse.
Yeah.
Keep you from getting, dragged into more conflict, and protect yourself emotionally and professionally.
Yeah, and according to them, it actually worked. They said they felt at peace, like the stress just went away. They also noticed that some of the difficult coworkers either changed their behavior or weren't even around as much. And they connected those positive changes back to their focus on humility and, trusting God.
So they saw that as God working things out.
Yes.
This just goes to show you how, changing how you react can change the whole situation.
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't like a miracle,
Yeah.
Maybe their coworkers just reacted differently because they weren't, getting a rise out of them.
Right.
But either way, it was good for them, right?
It shows that sometimes our own reactions can make things worse. And changing our approach can change the whole dynamic.
Finally, they talked about why they thought these coworkers were giving them a hard time in the first place.
Okay.
They felt like these people became enemies for no reason. Or maybe they were influenced by others without ever really getting to know them.
Oof.
Which really makes them feel unfairly targeted.
Right.
And it makes them even more determined to, stick with their spiritual approach rather than trying to reason with people they see as just being negative for no good reason. I mean, that feeling of being targeted for no reason, it's so common, in these kinds of conflicts. It can be really hard to understand why people do what they do.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like they said, it's not even about you.
Right.
It's about them or what they've heard.
So to sum it all up, this deep dive into the video from Trust the Flow shows us a really unique and personal way to deal with tough coworkers. It's all about relying on prayer and spiritual principles, choosing humility and holding back, even when it's hard.
Yeah.
and trusting that God will handle the situation instead of trying to fix it yourself.
It's definitely a different way of looking at things. It makes you think,
Hmm.
So, listeners, I got to ask,
Yeah.
what do you think? Does this resonate with you? How do you handle, difficult people at work?
It really makes you wonder, what other ways there are to approach these stressful situations. Maybe this has got you thinking about different solutions, whether you're religious or not. Or maybe you're thinking about how powerful our own reactions can be.
Yeah.
Maybe you even want to learn more about, the psychology of feeling targeted or left out in a group.
There's a lot to unpack when it comes to people,
Yeah.
We hope this, looking at one person's beliefs and how they deal with things, has given you something to think about.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into this really unique approach to a problem that so many of us face at work. Until next time,
See you then.
bye.